Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I thought I would do something kind of simple and pretty in a ring. I want to do a little Art Deco ring with a marquee amethyst in it, with a little bit of decoration on each side. I think it should be kind of a fun project, and I hope it turns out nice. I've seen similar things before, and I always liked them, so I'm going to give it a shot, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, let's get started. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. I have a number of different types. They all have some, or well, most of them have some useful information about metalsmithing on the back. This one has flow temperatures of solder. Some of them have conversion charts, which I find really useful, so check them out. The big feature, though, for me, is it allows me to keep a record of my projects for future reference. So I can go back and revisit things without having to recreate the wheel each time. So. And they have a nice dot matrix in the background, which helps me to draw better pictures too. So this is what I had in mind today. I picked out a little amethyst, like that, and it's about a 5.5 millimeters by 10. This is kind of what I had in mind. I've never done a two-prong setting for a marquee, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a base for it with slanted insides. It's got a seat for the stone. I think I'm going to use flattened 12 gauge maybe. I found a little piece of flattened 12 gauge right here. That'll give me some depth to deal with the pavilion of the stone as well. For these ends, I'm going to use flattened 14 gauge. 14 gauge starts out as 1.6 millimeters, and I'll be squishing it in one dimension a little bit. The outside band is going to be 16 gauge square wire, which is 1.3 millimeters. These inner pieces are going to be some probably 26 gauge sheet with a little bit of 18 gauge round wire to create the outside edge of it. And then I'm going to try and create a little design on the inside, maybe a little stamp if I can get the stamp in there. I have a little asterisk kind of stamp that would look cool, but we'll see. If not, I'll improvise. So the real key on this one is going to be, we're going to have to set the square wire here, maybe cut kind of a little notch on the inside of it to contain the point here, so it's got like a little cup, and then push it in to kind of hold that in place. I'm not sure, I've always been told that settings like this aren't very secure, but I think if we do it right, it'll be pretty secure. So let's give it a shot and see how it turns out. What's the worst thing that could happen? So let's start making the seat for this thing. Like I said, I've got this stuff. I just rolled it through the rolling mill a little bit more to make it a little bit flatter. And so let's anneal it. Annealing is heating the metal until it starts to kind of soften up. Has to do with the atoms inside of it, the crystalline structure of the atoms becoming less locked in place with each other. They become more randomized. So we'll heat that up just a little bit and then let it cool off and then quench it. You gotta get it up to kind of a dull red color. Kind of a red hue to it right there. And we'll just let it cool off a little bit. My finger's a little rough today, so I'm using one of these little finger cuts to kind of protect it. Every once in a while I get some hand eczema breakout from abusing my hand so much. I'm curious if any of you have ever tried these a double prong setting like that, where it's got just two sides, two prongs, I should say. So I'm just going to bend this like this until we get kind of a match to the curve of that. So I want it to extend past here a little bit. And then when I cut it off, then I can file it flat. And then do the second side and file it flat and just butt the two up against each other. That should make for a nice little base for the stone to sit on. Start by getting this straight like that. This might be a good time to use a miter vise jig. What do you think? If you don't have one of these are pretty useful tools. They allow you to get nice flat edges on things. And since I want these two ends to be parallel to each other, if I line this up right, I can get it pretty nice, probably. Okay, so let's try and get those two flush. That looks alright. Let's do the second one. And then we'll put them together and see how the stone looks on them. And from that stage we can then kind of continue doing this a couple more times until we get them worked down just to the right size. I want this to basically be just exactly the same size as the girdle of the stone. So we'll attempt to get it like that. When you're That's pretty good. So one of the things, I'm going to do just a tiny bit more. But then one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten the tips here of the setting so that I can mount those vertical prongs on there. So let's take this down just a skosh more. Okay, well let's go ahead and solder these two together. And we'll see what we got going. If you're interested in my solder and torch setup and everything, and you're new here, here's some information. So I do something called pick soldering, which is where I use a titanium pick in order to pick up a little bit of solder in order to place it wherever I want it to go pretty precisely. If you're interested in learning about that, I'll put a link up there to a video. That's one of the more useful skills that I learned over the years. It allows you to put solder right where you want it in exactly the amount that you want it, once you've kind of gotten the hang of it. So I think what I'll do next is I'll clean this up with the file a little bit, and I'm going to flatten those ends. And then we'll take a ball burr and kind of carve out a cavity in there. And then we can go ahead and mount those vertical prongs, I think. So let's do that. Let's clean this up a little bit with the file. Okay, so let's go over. I'm going to set this in the miter vise jig so I can actually hold on to it more easily while I use that ball burr. I just want to get it relatively secure in there. It's just hard to hold on to a little tiny piece like that, so this makes it a little bit easier when we're using that burr to carve that out. So let's go do that. I'm hoping that you'll be able to forgive my mess here. Trying to get the girdle of the stone to sit right on top of that, kind of. That's pretty good, actually. So, like I said, I've never made a setting just like this, so this will be kind of a fun experiment. But I think that's probably good. So let's go back over and see what else we need to do. Hopefully you can see that I have this pushed into this softer magnesia block. And now I'll just solder those to either end. I actually tapered them outwards just a little bit on the base there. So let's see how that works. Okay, I think those are pretty good. So I'm going to cut those off on the bottom here. So file that kind of flush. And I'm not going to need near that much prong, so I'm going to cut those off a little bit shorter too. So we should be able to, like I said, hollow out a little cavity in those ends there so we can bend them down over a little bit to create kind of a rounded top that holds it in. And I think that'll do it, but we'll see when we get to that stage. So, okay, so here's the pieces of 16 gauge I cut for the band. So let's find the center of those, and I'm going to make a notch because we need to kind of sharply bend these on the ends here. So I want them to do that. So I'm going to cut a notch right at the center point. I cut these to be about a size 7. So you need to check how close you got to the center is by marking it and then flipping one of them around. Okay, so now I'm going to file a little bit of a notch there. So I want it to start off that way and then curve back around. So that's about the angle that I want, I think. Pretty close guess. Probably almost good enough. Okay, my next step is going to be to solder these notches that I just created closed so that it becomes a permanent band. I hope this turns out as nice as I'm visualizing it. Sometimes things do, sometimes things don't. You know? You picture something in your head and it doesn't always quite match the outcome, but sometimes it's cool in a different way than you thought. This one's probably going to be more of an advanced project. So if you're new to this, watch this, but don't try to do this until you've got a little more practice under your belt, because you want to kind of get a feel for things first before you start to do something where you have to do such detailed soldering. You got to be a little careful with square wire. It tries to twist on you when you're bending it, so try and keep all your sides parallel if you can. You need to go back and adjust it slightly. So I don't want it touching the ends. I want it to be balanced between those two and connected to these decorative pieces. That's pretty good as far as the distance, as long as I can get these to be pretty regular. That's pretty symmetrical. I think I'm going to solder those together like that. Let's do a little cleanup filing here. So now I want to make those little things that are going to connect this to the ring itself. Okay, I just had a little thought. I'm going to make these a little bit longer than they need to be on this dimension. Right here should be the same, but up here, make it a little longer than it needs to be. That way when we bend it, it's going to still have enough room to connect to this, because I wanted to put this in after we bend it. So let's make these about this size. And I think we may be able to do it the same exact way we did this thing with cutting a little notch in the wire. This is 18 gauge round, so. Okay, let's solder these two closed, and then we'll file them and see if we can get a nice shape like that. So I just cut this end a little bit shorter, this end right here, and then refiled it to see if I can get it to fit in there a little bit better. That's pretty good. So I'm going to solder this together like that, and then we're going to solder it onto a piece of 26 gauge sheet. That looks pretty good, actually. So let's just kind of give this a small file on the side that's going to be on the sheet. So chances are there's plenty of solder in this from when I soldered those little bits together. So I don't think I probably need to even add any. Okay, so I was going to use this little stamp on the inside edges, but it's just a little bit too big for that. And I don't think I can freehand like carve a nice, this is kind of like a little star shape. So I'm going to solder a little ball in there, I think. So let's make a couple little balls. Supposing I can find my careful block, which I used before. Let's sweat a little solder on there and solder it in and see how it looks. Now, let's just trim that excess off. I'm just going to clean this up with a rubber silicone white wheel on the Dremel. I'm going to quick solder that one in there since I just trimmed that. So we'll just use a little tiny bit of solder. Hopefully I can find a smallish piece. Okay, so I'm going to make another one of those, then I'll be right back. Now let's turn this into a ring shape. Make sure I have these ends filed nice and flat. Push that in so nothing moves too much. Let's see if we can't solder this closed. I want to make sure to really try and pry the balls out of here. Nobody wants an embarrassing ball falling off incident. That doesn't do anybody any good. Okay. So now I need to remove just a little bit on each side. So I'm probably going to use my saw to do this, so I'll be right back. I'm just going to take the saw and cut a little piece out. Okay, so I have everything positioned the way I want it to. It took a little while of adjusting to get that to sit in there nicely. Let me use, I think I'm gonna, anyway. A little bit of easy solder. I'm going to let that pickle, and then we'll get the little grooves cut in there, and then we'll see if we can get that stone set in there after we get it all polished. And so we've arrived at the end. I thinned these out, rounded the tops, and used a ball burr to carve a little notch, kind of just a circular kind of indent right where the girdle of the stone was going to meet it. And then I pushed them down just a little bit so the stone would stay in place. It's still rocking side to side here, so I'm going to go ahead and push it down the rest of the way. Gently on either side. You gotta be careful with Marquise. Sometimes the tips on these stones are just a little bit fragile. I suppose that's one advantage of this sort of a setting, because it protects the tips. Well, I'll make sure that's all the way down as tight as it'll go, so this doesn't move at all. it doesn't catch on things. But I think that turned out pretty well. That's kind of what I was looking for, and I like it. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you might have done differently. I always like to hear people's stories, so leave me a comment if you want to. Okay, well that was a simple marquee amethyst ring in an Art Deco-ish style. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button before you go. That really helps my channel out, and I do appreciate that. I'd also really like it if you'd go to my main channel page and check out some of my other videos. I have over 620 now. I do 3 per week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday. And so there's a constant stream of good content coming out regarding metalsmithing stuff. So, and there's lots of different levels of information over there, beginner, intermediate, advanced. So I think you're almost certain to find something useful over there. So make sure to subscribe to my channel. I would love it if you did that, and it makes it much easier to find my content. So I wanted to thank a couple of groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I have a new one. I wanted to thank Sunshine for signing up. Thank you, Sunshine. I appreciate your support, and I think you'll find that there's a great group of people over there that you can interact with. It's a nice artistic community with a whole bunch of really smart people. So thank you to all of my patrons for that. I really appreciate the community you've built over there, as well as your financial support. My YouTube subscribers, we just passed 28,000, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I truly love the comments that you leave, and I've met the nicest people through YouTube, and I really do appreciate all of that stuff. I love it when you tell me how you do things. I love it when you give me ideas for videos. Constructive criticism is always welcome. And I do also appreciate the financial help, the buy me a coffees, the super thanks, the merch purchases, and buying my ebooks. So thank you for that. I couldn't do that without you either. That makes my channel sustainable, and I appreciate it. Last, don't forget to visit the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out about that cool community over there. There's a link to my merch store should you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks or some other merch. There's a link to my newest ebook, which is a guide to 2025's tutorials that I did. I did over 170, and there's a page for each of those. And on the page there's a link to the video. There's a picture of the sketch that I drew prior to doing the video. There's a picture of the final outcome, a list of materials, stone information, a difficulty rating, and even some notes I took about the project after the fact, things I might have learned from it, things I might do differently, whether I like the project or not and why. You know, things that came to mind after the fact. So it's got lots of useful information, and it's a great way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a nice way to support my channel. So get yourself that one. You can even get a 3-pack of the 3 years I've done it for $15 off. So check it out. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.